Meeting to order, and glad to have everyone here. We have quite a bit of business to attend to, and we will get to that after we call roll. I'd like to ask Stacy to call the roll.
Mr. Hostetler.
Here.
Mr. Lyons.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Mr. Corman.
Present.
Mr. Ellison.
Here.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
Mr. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Marshall.
Here.
Judge Covington.
Here. I'd like to ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We'll move to number 4, approval of previous meetings minutes as presented in your packet. Are there any questions or comments in regards to those meetings as presented?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Hostetler. Is there a second? Second. A second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 5, transfers. Are there any questions or comments in regards to the transfers as presented in your packet?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Livingston. Second from Mr. Corman. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Bills and hand checks. I'd like to ask Michelle, is this where our refund to the clerk's office? Just wanting to point out in that there was, would you just clarify that item?
The clerk, I believe their software had a glitch, and they overpaid us by approximately $290,000. So we refunded them.
We started to say no takebacks, but I don't think we could do that.
You
So
didn't even
I just wanted to point that out.
What about a restocking fee?
Just 1%.
15.
That's normal, isn't it? Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that. Are there any other questions or comments in regards to the bills and hand checks as presented? Motion from Mr. Livingston, a second from Mr. Wallace. Any other comment or question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Will we take the normal 3 to 4 weeks to return the money so it can draw interest?
We are very efficient, and Michelle is on that, so no. Now, number 7, I'd like the record to reflect that the clerk's fees of $485,955.13 were presented. Next, the sheriff's fees. I'd like the record to reflect that $83,873.75 was presented by Sheriff Tony Hampton. Number 9 moves us down on the agenda to Resolution 2003 KBI program, and Jack Connor and Mr. Bruno is here with us. Jack, would you present information in regards to this?
Happy to. It's always an exciting time. Jack Connor, I'm representing Scott County United, the Economic Development Group. So it's always good to present a client to you. This is for, and I know some new members of the court, but this is for a Kentucky Business Investment Act incentive. Used to be called KIDA, but it's in this particular case is for manufacturers and other related kinds of industries. But this particular one is for Adient USA Inc., or LLC, excuse me. Adient, formerly Johnson Controls, started off with Johnson Controls HVAC, then Johnson Controls Foamec, and Joe Johnson Seating is now called Adient. Mr. Todd Bruno, the plant manager, is here. It is required by KBI. This is for a final approval. KBI does require by the law, KRS statutes, that we present to you, the client presents to you the project, what it involves, what they're doing. I will follow up with a piece of paper that you have in front of you in relationship to the full process and where we are today and where we have been. So let me let Mr. Bruno explain the project to you.
Good morning. This is specifically in relation to our new RAV4 business that we just brought in to support the RAV4 business at Toyota. It's about a $6.5 million investment for us, brought in 42 jobs to the plant. We do all 4 vehicles, Camry, Avalon, Lexus, so this is basically to fund that.
That's great news, and we need all the great news we can get, so thank you,
And
Mr.
let me
Mayor.
kind of add on to that, Judge, if I may. In terms of economic development, there's always 3 priorities. I think everybody enjoys the locations. That's one of the 3. Retention is the second, and expansion. In our community, the foundation's been built. It's based upon manufacturing, so our highest priority is to expand what you have. So Adient is a prime example, as well as other manufacturers who've been able to expand in our community. We build upon that. You have before you a copy of a process. It may be lengthy, but we did this. I've shown the court that before, but it kind of takes you from the beginning all the way through. So as an example, second sentence says local support letters were required by law, again, for the mayor. If the city's involved in the county, and obviously in this case they are, so we get a letter of support. Judge Covington drafted a letter, submitted it to the cabinet back in May of 2019, saying that he would recommend to the court the incentive. Went down to the board meeting, that's about 3 more down. KIDFA approved the preliminary plan itself, the preliminary development application. Then it goes a little bit further. Today, local support resolution ordinances. Last Monday, we presented before City Council. They approved their municipal order. This is going to be a resolution. Today, we're at fiscal court. So this is final. Now, that doesn't mean that Adient will then begin immediately to take or activate their incentive, because there's another step. Within 2 years, they have to file what's called a final application to the KIDFA Board, Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority. Then they can start working off their incentives. The incentives are only related to occupational tax. Has nothing to do with net profit tax. It only relates to the 42 employees that Todd talked about. The county participates for those 42 at 1/2 of 1% of the occupation tax. So this is brand new money to you. You are not giving up anything. You are in fact gaining the 50 cents. City does the same thing. The state matches it times 3. So it's a total of 1% city county and 3% from the state of Kentucky. That is what wrapped up their total amount of incentives, and that incentive is amortized over a full 10 years. They have to maintain the employment. There's a relationship with the Department of Revenue, relationship with the city and with the county, and for those people with Adient. So they track those. You can never go less than 90% in terms of the incentive. This is a lot of information. Apologize, but that's just the way it is. And we've done a lot of these, and they've been very, very successful. Yes, sir.
Do you know what the average wage and maybe the total
Sure do.
overall benefits and wage package are?
The KBI report that was done in May for the 42 jobs, the average hourly rate including benefits is $27 an hour. Yes, sir. I can't answer the second.
Where will these employees come from?
The majority of them are from Scott County. We do have some that are outlying counties, but vast majority, we have about 75% of our employees at Adient at our facility here in Georgetown are from the local Scott County area.
I just hate passing economic incentives for companies to go out and hire people from Lexington. And Scott County gives it up.
With the labor and workforce development issues we have today, I would use Toyota as a prime example. Only 35% of their employees live in our community. The rest of them come in. That's our labor supply. We got a 3.2 unemployment rate. We got to find them somewhere. And so you'll find that across the board, not just in terms of manufacturing, retail, service sector, et cetera. It's that bad. That is that bad in terms of finding labor. I understand your issue, Bill, but you are, in fact, you are receiving employees who pay an occupational tax, but yet, in fact, live somewhere else, so you're not providing the service.
After that 10, is it 10 years, and
10 years.
then after that, it goes back to whatever
Yes, sir.
normal, whatever type of.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
What, any other questions from anyone on the court? I will ask Rand to read the resolution. Yes, sir.
How is this kept up with? Are there annual reports that are filed to
Department of Revenue.
Department of Revenue, so that there's a tracking of, okay.
Absolutely.
I've never asked that question before,
No,
so
no,
I was
you're right.
curious.
I'm glad. It's a great question.
Scott Hall at the Revenue Commission also does a monthly update
Okay,
and stays on top of it as well, and I feel very confident in his record keeping. Michelle attends those meetings as well, and we've commented before about that's good to have that monthly update.
yeah.
They will contract with the Department of Revenue and the Financial Incentive side of the Economic Development Cabinet. This thing is very, very well tracked to make sure. Yes, sir.
So with that said, if there's no other questions, I'll ask Rand to read the resolution.
Resolution 20-03, a resolution approving the granting of local inducements to Adient USA LLC pursuant to KRS Chapter 154, Subchapter 32. Whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court finds that it is a legitimate public purpose of said court to undertake activities for the creation of, addition to, or the retention of jobs for residents of this community and the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court authorized the granting for credit of the occupational license fee in an amount up to 0.5% for up to 10 years for any approved company pursuant to the Kentucky Business Investment Program in accordance with a tax incentive agreement between the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority and the company. Whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court finds that offering the local inducements authorized by the KBI program for the purpose of creating and or retaining jobs is in furtherance of the public purposes of said county and will benefit the Scott County Fiscal Court by preserving sources of tax revenue for the public services provided to the citizens of Scott County. And whereas Adient USA LLC has applied for the benefits authorized by KBI for its manufacturing plant located at 824 Lemons Mill, Georgetown, Kentucky. Whereas the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority has preliminarily approved the application filed by Adient USA LLC. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. Section 1, that the Scott County Fiscal Court does hereby approve the granting inducements to Adient USA LLC for a project more particularly described in Resolution KBI I-19-22559 as approved by the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority on May 30th, 2019 pursuant to KRS 154.32-030. Section 2, the Scott County Fiscal Court agrees to forego the collection of 1/2 of the 1% occupational license fee that would otherwise be due it, which shall be retained by Adient USA LLC for inducements under the KBI program for a period beginning at final approval and ending no later than 10 years from the date of activation. Section 3, that the Scott County Judge Executive is hereby authorized and directed to execute, acknowledge, and to deliver on behalf of the Scott County Fiscal Court any and all papers, instruments, certificates, affidavits, and other documents, and to do and or cause to be done any and all acts and things necessary and proper for the granting of the inducements authorized by the act in this resolution. Section 4, this resolution and the approval contained therein will only impact the eligible company's occupational wages. It will not affect the net profits tax imposed by any local taxing authority, including the Scott County Fiscal Court. Section 5, this resolution shall be effective upon its passage and approval. Approved, assuming you do this 13th day of March 2020.
Any other questions or comments?
Judge, I'll just say that, Todd being the plant manager, Todd and I went to high school, we grew up together, and, there's a role model right there for someone who is leading the company, can live right here in Scott County, and hopefully attract other people, employees to come live in Scott County, so.
Thank you, Chad.
Todd, did your back get sore dragging Chad through? Magistrate Wallace, Dr. Wallace is a stellar individual.
I was gonna ask if he was a constituent.
That's the truth, probably. Looking for a vote. No,
You have to pass it now.
I agree with Dr. Wallace. It is fantastic when you see our own homegrown talent leading companies here in our community. So I agree with Dr. Wallace. Just giving him a hard time. Is there a motion? A motion from Mr. Corman, and I see a second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
We will now ask Casey Smith with District 7, State Transportation Cabinet, to come and present information in regards to our rural secondary program. J.R. Brandenburg and myself went and met with District 7 staff and really appreciate the professional job that they do. And I do really think that they look out for the best interests of Scott County as a whole. And they have a very tough job trying to look at all of our rural secondary roads and just the whole program. So, Casey, I appreciate what you all do and would ask you to just present information to the court in regards to this.
Yeah, thank you, Judge, and good morning. I'm Casey Smith. I'm with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet District 7 office in Lexington, and today I'd like to discuss our recommendations for the rural secondary program for the upcoming fiscal year 2021. Just so that before I get into a deep discussion about how this program works, is everybody somewhat familiar on how the rural secondary program works? Okay, so I won't get too deep in the weeds on this. So on your handout, we got two sides. We got one side that has a table with all the dollar amounts, and then also on the other side a map of Scott County, which indicates the rural secondary roadways in the county of Scott. In the front, where we have the table, there are a couple things that I wanted to point out. On the very top line, we have a resurfacing cycle. That shows a 29 to 38 year resurfacing cycle. That is getting really up there on the high side. The way that this number is calculated is based on the tax revenue that we're collecting for the rural secondary roadways, the number of miles that are within the county, and how much the bids have been coming in from the past couple fiscal years as far as how many miles we're able to cover in our resurfacing projects. So naturally, due to inflation, we wouldn't be able to cover as much mileage for the stagnant revenue dollars that we're getting, but hopefully with House Bill 580, we'll be able to change that, maybe make it a little more sustainable. But so I just wanted to point out on the flex percentage, and again, the program works the same way as it did last year. So the rural secondary funds that we have initially allocated for this year, a certain percentage is offered to the county to address their county roads. However, since it's flex, the county does have the ability to give us those flex funds back so it could be applied to state roads. So on that flex percentage, based on the maintenance rating, you'll notice that it did slip a grade level. So we are down from a 15% to a 10% flex dollars that the state is willing to give to the county. I do want y'all to keep in mind that there is like a year lag with these maintenance ratings because they're looking at the conditions of the roads as of now. Now, last year, the court decided to give the flex dollars back to the state to address, I believe it was Ironworks Road. So those projects have been awarded, and it is the projects are listed right there under fiscal year 20, under the second blue diamond. We have Long Lick Pike, Ironworks Road, and a continuation of Ironworks Road. Those projects have been awarded. Coming in the spring, you're going to start seeing work on there. But since we're still technically in fiscal year 20, we would expect to have those roadways resurfaced by the end of June. So going back to the on the backside where we have the Scott County map, just wanted to point out a couple things, talking about the history of the rural secondary program. We have all the roadways that are highlighted in yellow are part of our rural secondary roadway system. Those that are encircled in blue are the roadways that we have addressed in the past 10 fiscal years. So you see that we have covered a lot of ground in the past 10 years, but you will notice that there are some roadways that have not been circled for quite some time. We also have two other colors. There's an orange circle that encompasses the recommendations that the state has for the general rural secondary funds. And then the green circle is the area that we're indicating if the court decides to give the flex dollars back to the states, we would address that roadway as well. So going back to the table, through the list, there is an orange diamond for our fiscal year 21 recommendations. What we would like to take care of this year is about 3.3 miles of roadway, Kentucky 1973, which is Ironworks Road, for about 1.9 miles, starting at around US 62 and continuing north on the other side of 62. And then also Kentucky 1963 Lyle Road for 1.4 miles. If the court decides to give the flex dollars back to the state, we would like to address a continuation of Ironworks Road out to the Scott-Fayette County line as indicated on the map. And so what I would ask from the court today would be for 2 votes. The first vote would be to accept the acceptance of the recommendations of the general RS funds as indicated by the roadways under the orange diamond. And then the second vote is whether or not the court would like to give the flex dollars back to the state to address a continuation of Ironworks Road, which is a green diamond.
Casey, one of the things on the map, back on the backside showing Ironworks, at our meeting, discussed it, those circles, the orange and the green, if we elected to do this, would actually touch. That would, remember that being part of the conversation. Is that correct?
Let me check we gotta check the mileposts here.
My thought,
Good. Okay.
my thought was that would complete, that would complete that end of that road, and is that?
The map doesn't show that.
The map doesn't show it, but JR, you remember at our meeting that it was actually that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the mileposts on the descriptions here on the table. They actually do, they do meet at milepost 1.54.
They connect.
Yeah,
And
so
I thought that was
it's,
important for the court
when
to.
you're drawing in circles and graphics and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
They just need to stretch that circle out a little longer.
Yeah, yeah.
But
That is the intent, correct.
and JR and I both talked, and JR, you're welcome to address the court, but our recommendation to the court would be to give the flex funds back for the Ironworks project as described. And that's your recommendation as well, JR?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
You said the average resurfacing 28 to 30 years, or somewhere around there. Is that what
29
you
to
said?
38,
Okay.
yeah.
Is that for Scott County?
That's
Okay,
for Scott
do you
County.
know what
only.
average is in the state?
Well, I could tell you that we really would like to see that number to be around the 12 to 15 year
Sure.
range. Some of the counties have attained that. We actually have some counties that do have 8 to 10.
Okay.
But they would not necessarily have as many miles of rural secondary. Scott
Like a
County is
Robertson
big,
County or something.
and Scott County's growing like crazy too. So you got that additional traffic volume that's hitting the roads as well. So, but yeah.
If the House bill passes, do you know how that would affect our resurfacing
Right.
cycle?
So for the rural secondary program, it is set up so that 22.2% of the revenue generated by the fuel tax is actually allocated for the rural secondary program. The purpose of that program is so that these older farm to market roads will actually get addressed, will have dollars to actually maintain the roadways, even though they may not be utilized as much. Because whenever we look at projects, we're looking at benefit costs and stuff. And so we want to see how far our dollars are going to go and how much impact we're going to make. Sometimes these rural secondary roads may get forgotten. So that's why we have a separate allocation of that 22.2% that would be allocated for these type of roads. So we would expect that to improve if House Bill
But
580 gets
there's
through.
not been any kind of estimate or anything like that?
I don't have, I don't have an estimate on that, yeah.
Okay.
What other questions does anyone have? And we have 2 items to essentially address. One is accepting FY21, the recommended rural secondary projects, and then FY21 flex funds. What other questions would anyone have?
I'll make a motion for the first proposal to accept the roads that are presented for fiscal year 2020-21
As presented,
as presented.
is there a second? Are there any questions? There's a second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments in regards to that motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. So the next item is FY21 recommended rural secondary projects using flex funds as described on Ironworks Road. What questions or comments does anyone have in regards to that? And is there a motion? A motion from Mr. Burke. Is there a second? A second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Casey, you don't get to leave quite yet.
No, I don't. I got another point of business.
Yes. Yes.
Wants his money back, now he's gonna give us.
sign date and yes. I can send back a scanned copy.
Thank you. Now, the other item that we need to address while Casey's here is something we've talked about for too long, and I'm glad that we're here to talk about it some more and maybe get a piece of it nailed down. I passed out before our meeting. Casey had been kind enough to send a map that was correct and had the roads listed that we want to consider to adopt. And JR and I have checked these out, and this is contingent upon the roads being put up to spec and repaved before we would officially take them over. But Rand has a resolution, and I want to make sure your resolution has the correct roads. The roads to be transferred include North Race Fork, Charles L. Parker, Pokeberry Road, Hilltop Road, and Cherry Blossom Spur, as described on the sheet that I shared with you and Casey sent.
He got his copy from Casey.
Okay, so you're good. We're good. Just want to make sure we're all on one page. These roads, Casey, would you like to share anything about? Some of them are like underpasses and created. They were created because of other projects, and that made them state roads. And in all reality, they should not be still.
Yeah, so back in the 60s when I-75 was being constructed, there were sections of county road that had to be realigned, and the purpose of those realignments were that being an interstate is grade separated intersections. So we would have these county roads that we would have to like dig down or bring up so that the interstate could overpass these roadways. Since the state conducted these projects and built these small sections of roadways, they were under the ownership of the state. So ever since the 60s, so 70 years later, it's still on our list of state roadways. Now, they no longer function, of course, as part of our state primary system. They really only transport like more of the local constituents in the area. If you notice on the map, these are just little islands indicate state highways. And on either side of the state highway is the county route. So, for example, for Pokeberry, Pokeberry is county routes, let me see, 1025. So at the end of Pokeberry Road, we have state route Kentucky 2912. And then it goes on for 0.45 miles, and then county route 1025 just takes on over again. So we are doing this as more of a formal way of doing a little bit of house cleaning on some of these small sections of roads that really do not have any logical point of being state maintained or state owned, and we are looking to officially get these transferred over to the county.
Now, there were a few others that were presented, and after discussion with JR and some magistrates, we elected not to recommend to the court for us to transfer those over. And a couple of those were spurs off of US 25. And since our conversation, some of the conversations about federal funds being used, our conversation the last time we talked about this included the county taking those spurs over and then transferring them to the adjacent property owner. It just made sense. But there's a complication for us to be able to do that. Casey, could you clarify that?
Yeah, so there are CFR, there are federal regulations that whenever federal dollars are used to acquire right-of-way, that the pieces of right-of-way and pieces of roadway must remain for public use. That's the key. If it does transfer over to a private use, money does have to be transferred for that transaction to make it private, and that is for the fair market value of that property along with roadway. That's something that's a little bit of a tough sell to sell somebody a roadway that they'll be ultimately maintaining, but then we're forcing them to purchase it, and we can't do that. For as long as it maintains the ownership of a government entity, such as a county or a city, the transfer can be made free of charge for as long as it remains open to the public.
So I put a hold on those and felt like we could go ahead and consider what Casey has presented today. And then one other item, Dr. Wallace and I have talked about, and we've talked about it at Midway Road, about essentially from what point?
Well, it's from the county line.
From the county line.
Up to Ironworks.
Up to
For
Ironworks.
some reason, that's a county route. However, when you get into Woodford County, that's state route. So,
It's Road 341 in Woodford County, and then when it gets to the bridge, it turns into a county road. So it's half state, half county, and the state has agreed to take over, I think Casey told me about 1.5 miles that is currently owned by the county to Ironworks Road. So it would be a state road to a state road.
Is that included in this resolution?
no, it is not included in this one.
Would we need to come back to consider that formally?
Yeah, we could do that. at
We can do
another
that.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's been part of the discussion. I just wanted everybody to be aware of it.
The
So,
reason why I didn't put in the resolution is that we didn't have deep conversation on
Right.
that, in the last time
yeah.
we met. So
But
I
it,
didn't
but,
rush it. Yeah.
but it's a good thing for us to do that, I think. I think at this point, Rand, can you read the resolution? And
Sir. This is Resolution 20-04, Scott County Fiscal Court Resolution regarding road transfer. Whereas the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet has constructed Interstate 75, Kentucky 620 between the years of 1960 and 1986 as part of multiple projects referenced in Exhibit A, here and after the project. The Cabinet's reference to the location of these are found in Exhibit B attached here to this resolution. Whereas the construction of the aforementioned projects by the Cabinet resulted in certain sections of old roadway as well as connector roads, approach roads, and other property owned and maintained by the Cabinet no longer being needed by the Cabinet for the Commonwealth of Kentucky's primary road system. And whereas the Cabinet seeks to eliminate from the Commonwealth of Kentucky's primary road system certain road facilities more specifically defined in Exhibit A and illustrated in Exhibit B, which is attached here to this resolution. Whereas the Cabinet has offered to transfer all of the Commonwealth of Kentucky's interest and ownership in those certain road facilities, more specifically defined in Exhibit A, attached here to this resolution to the Scott County Fiscal Court. And whereas upon the Fiscal Court's adoption and approval of this resolution, the Cabinet will furnish an official order detailing the transfer of all the Commonwealth's interest and ownership in those certain road facilities, more specifically defined in Exhibit A to the Fiscal Court. Whereas the official order will request the Secretary of the Finance and Administration Cabinet transfer the Commonwealth of Kentucky's interest in those certain road facilities more specifically defined in Exhibit A to the Fiscal Court by the necessary conveyance document. And whereas the Fiscal Court will assume all maintenance responsibilities for the certain road facilities more specifically defined in Exhibit A and illustrated in Exhibit B, but with the understanding that the county will resurface both Charles R. Parker Lane, which is Kentucky 2915, and Cherry Blossom Spur, which is PR 1109, in the next fiscal year to bring them up to adequate standards of the Fiscal Court. Whereas the Fiscal Court has reviewed this resolution, Exhibit A, which more specifically defines the certain road facilities that will be transferred to the Fiscal Court and recommends approval, saying, now therefore be it resolved by the Fiscal Court that this resolution is hereby approved and that the county judge executive is hereby authorized to execute same on behalf of the Fiscal Court. Adopted and approved this 13th day of March 2020.
yes, sir.
Question, is the repaving or resurfacing is for Charles L. Parker, and what was the other one?
The Cherry Blossom
Cherry
Spur.
Blossom Spur, the Pokeberry, those are in pretty good shape, aren't they?
Yeah, and Hilltop,
And Hilltop and,
it was in pretty decent shape,
Yeah.
I think.
So, Judge, are you going to create maintenance agreements with the homeowners, or will we just go down that? I mean, I know this is
I
separate.
think we do this first.
Yeah.
And then go forward with JR, talking with homeowners and going from there. Do you think that's wise to do that way? I mean, that's what I thought.
I mean, it's Rick's district, but he would be, no, but I think that's probably from a fiscal standpoint that we need to be, that's our, our fiduciary duty.
Yeah. No,
Well, it's my understanding we're taking them in as a county road.
we're taking them in as a county road.
So once Charles L. Parker is a disaster, y'all already know that, but that's the one you're resurfacing.
The whole road or that part?
What's that?
I mean, is there, so that was gonna be my question is that milepost 0 to .352, is that the entire road
Yes.
itself? It is the entire road, not just a section of it, okay.
No, it's the entire road. That's all. Well, there,
And the intent
No,
is to
that's where,
resurface the entire road.
Cherry
Same-
Blossom
same
Spur
thing
is
with,
where-
So there's no,
Cherry
are
Blossom
there
Spur.
sections where there's a
Clark's.
county road, but there's
Teddy
a,
Clark's.
just a
That's what I'm,
portion
that's
of
the
it is a state road?
No, with these,
No, it's a disaster.
complete
Yeah.
sections of the state part. So it's really more of the state has a portion of county road actually
Right.
because of that I-75 project.
Okay.
well, on, back to the Charles L. Parker, and maybe my memory's wrong, and I appreciate, Judge, you continue to pursue this, because I think we started this conversation maybe.
He got lost in the weeds.
Well, it was just trying to find out which way we could go, and Casey's presented that, and I appreciate that. But on Charles L. Parker, I know it's going north from Popeberry, but I thought there was a section of Charles L. Parker that
That
went
goes south
to the
of Popeberry.
south.
Yeah,
That's
mile
not,
point, that's mile point 0. It's down there, south of Popeberry.
okay, I read this wrong then. Okay.
And JR,
Oh, it does say, I'm sorry, I did read it wrong.
JR, do you have
My
any
fault.
concerns about any of the language in that resolution?
Well, I would like to maybe get with Austin and Casey and Dwight and look at these roads and kind of determine what kind of surface we're gonna put on them, the thickness and everything.
JR's only concern that we talked about was Cherry Blossom Spur. Cherry Blossom Spur is gonna get a lot of traffic potentially.
Heavy truck traffic. There's
Heavy
a truck
truck-
fueling
yeah.
station back in there now.
And your concern is the amount of base, and you know better than I do on that, but anything else concern you? Casey, could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, our intent is to bring up these roadways so that they're not an immediate burden to the county, and we'll be happy to, take care of whatever issues. Knowing the amount of traffic that will be coming down through that Cherry Blossom Spur, that is something that could be
And I'll tell you, a parcel that comes off of Cherry Blossom Spur, it just kind of dead ends back next to the railroad tracks. It's like a 46-acre parcel just came up for sale recently, so that piece of road could, it could go up, so.
right.
And we would like to determine where actually Cherry Blossom Spur begins and it goes off to the right.
Yeah, there's a hotel to the right, and we don't think that's, but we can work that out in the weeds there.
Yeah, that's getting into the pretty heavy details. But the intent is that, we're not transferring roadways that are not, that are going to be a burden on the county immediately. So.
I felt like this was the way to, because we needed to move on it.
So as far as Judge compliant, this resolution, if we vote for this resolution,
We're trusting our state colleagues.
okay.
I mean, it's listed on the resolution that there is an understanding that we would be addressing those two roads as well. So there's also a written document on that.
How you're going to address them? I mean, I don't want to.
It's gonna, it'll probably come from
I
our,
understand what you're saying. You don't have you don't have the nuts and bolts and details and thickness and all that. There's an understanding.
that's something that'll be coordinated with JR, yeah.
And-
But it'll be taken care of through our resurfacing funds more than likely. We have this pot of money, FDO5 is what we call them, that's our resurfacing funds. It might come from there, but it'll be like in the next fiscal year. So come this summer, we could start getting work
But
on that.
I'm telling you, JR and I were just out there 2 days ago. Jared went with us. Like, that's a mess, and it needs to be fixed. And those,
I was on earlier this week. It's been bad. Wow,
Yeah.
there's craters in it.
That's
now.
actually
Probably like Miners Branch used to be.
Yes.
That is one thing that I probably should have pointed out. Cherry Blossom Spur, Charles L. Parker Lane, all these roadways are unclassified roadways. So they're on the bottom of the list for maintenance. So the counties do have a better ability, or at least to be able to address any issues. But as far as from the state's perspective, we take care of the interstate, we take care of US 25. We take care of some major roadways to get some heavy use, and so it's really more practical and logical to transfer these over to the county for those purposes. But at the same time, we don't want, like I keep saying, we don't really want to give you an immediate burden to the county. That's why we're willing to address resurfacing if it gets transferred.
any other questions, comments?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Hostetler. Is there a second from Mr. Lyons? Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Casey, thank you.
One question, can you give us an update on the progress on the last leg of the bypass and the intersection at Long Lick? What's going on?
Austin's our section supervisor that covers the Scott County area. He could answer that question for you.
As you all know, you probably heard about Roundabout we're presenting, trying to get that on Long Lick. ATS did get back with its price this week, so I don't know if we're gonna accept it or not, but it's a better price than what we were thinking, so. We'll go
From 1.25 to
Yeah, it's a little high,
0.75.
so we're not gonna go with that, but I think it will progress. In my opinion, I think it will go now, and we should have the project complete by hopefully this fall, so.
So, Austin, you all won't open the bypass up until the roundabout's done at Long
Casey.
Lick and the bypass?
Yes, we'll switch traffic on the 25 end here this spring when we work on that end, but we won't open all the way through until we're finished with that roundabout.
But my understanding is you are probably not gonna be working on the roundabout during school.
Yes, most likely, if we agree to the price of the roundabout, we're gonna build it this summer and close out Long Lick, is our plan.
And-
That's the latest, so.
And just for folks to have in their head, similar to what's over Cynthiana 62 there,
Yes, something like that.
something like that.
Yes.
So, any other questions for,
So, it's the same question as Alvin and Chad. Is it possible that you would open up from 25 to Burton Pike? I don't, because there's an intersection.
When we pave, what we'll do is they're gonna pave all of that at once. I mean, they're gonna wanna keep that in the line, keep going fast. We're at such a short section from 25 to, that way I don't foresee them doing that surface at once.
I'm just wondering, I didn't know how that would work. And one other question, do you have any idea on what we just voted on, the resurfacing of a couple of roads? Will that happen this summer? Charles L. Parker and
Depends, I put estimates together for those a while back, not the spur roads, but I don't, honestly, I don't know.
it's okay.
Because
Yeah, I
that
mean-
FGL5 money for this year's already been allocated, and Scott County got a very good portion of that, so that's good. So,
And just for everyone to know, JR has put together another discretionary request, and we are awaiting feedback on
I
that.
did my review on that a few weeks ago. I talked to JR about that, and so I've submitted that already to
And we're optimistic. We're gonna be optimistic. No guarantees, no promises.
One more quick question. The intersection of the bypass and Burton Pike, will it be four-way stop or two-way stop or?
two-way stop.
Signs?
The Burton Pike is gonna stop. So.
Okay. One more question from down here.
Yeah, the bypass in Hemingway, which is Bradford, which is over here by Kroger. J-turn.
Yep, the R cut.
Session, where does that
That project
stand?
has been let.
Okay.
I have not seen a formal award on it yet, but it did get awarded. I've not got the word to go ahead and get the pre-con going, but we'll send out press releases and all that once we have the pre-con. But it has been awarded, so it will be done this summer.
Judge, Lemons Mill, where Southland Christian Church is and Lemons Mill Elementary on the bypass, there was a light scheduled to be there, and I think there had to be enough traffic flow to determine when that light was gonna be built by the developer. Where are we at with that?
You'd have to speak with our traffic people. I didn't even know that was.
I will follow up.
Yeah.
And who do I need to follow up with on that?
I'd say Natalia. McMillan.
Jared, will you assist us on that?
And for the record, Austin, I'd like to thank you, because I know we emailed quite a bit, and just want to thank you both for your quick response. So
Okay.
I know we keep you busy.
I think Rick had another question.
No, I'm good.
All right.
If you want me to, where Scott County got all the FDO5 this money, this year, do you want me to go over what's gonna be paved this year?
Yeah.
Okay, well, 25 from Elkhorn Creek all the way north to the county line, all that 15, 16 miles. 62.
Here, here.
62, the bypass to Bourbon, Harrison County. 460, I pressed pause on that through downtown from the interstate to Paynes because the water lines, but that will be done here soon. The 4-lane section of 32, up past Canes, almost to Lexus Way, and something else. But you did get a lot of pages.
Ironworks, you got
Would
the last
would
part
you,
of Ironworks.
would you share that with us via email, and then I'll share with the public? Yes. No, that's awesome news, and we appreciate your all's help and appreciate the partnership.
Man,
I
who's
do have one more question.
driving to town this summer? All that going on.
Hey, Judge, so did you say from Elkhorn Creek on 25 to?
Elkhorn Creek all the way up to the north to the county line. So,
Awesome. Yeah,
It needs it,
that's really good news.
and part of 32 and through Shadyville that way too.
and that needs it too. All right, thank you all. We'll move now to our Commonwealth Attorney, Sharon Muse.
Joe, I've got to go.
Hey, thank you, Magistrate Ellison.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have several exhibits for you all, just to look at while we're talking, or while I'm talking to you.
Let me pass them down for you.
We're killing trees today.
So I'll wait till everybody gets their exhibit. I'm Sharon Muse. I'm the Commonwealth's attorney for Woodford, Scott, and Bourbon counties. I was born and raised here, currently live here. And I believe I'm the first Scott County person to hold this position in, as far as I go, 80, 85 years. So obviously what we do in our office, I'm sorry, I'll grab one of those. I gave you two. What we do in our office is not pleasant to talk about, so some of the things I'm going to share with you might make you feel a little uncomfortable because it's just uncomfortable topics. But before we get started, to let you know, the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office is different than the County Attorney's Office. Our focus, our only task really, is to prosecute felonies. That can be murder charges, rape, sexual crimes against children, sodomy cases, home invasions, robbery, burglary, trafficking, gang crimes, and syndicates. So that's what I've just listed off is what we have in bulk right now. And so essentially what we do is either we bring a case ourselves or a case comes through the county attorney's office and we take it to a grand jury. We meet with the grand jury repeatedly throughout the month. We determine whether a case moves forward or not, and once it moves forward, we're going to take it to trial. So we do this again for Scott, Bourbon, and Woodford County. And so essentially what we do is if our office isn't doing our job, then there's a serious risk of public safety. And I know that we all agree that public safety is very important. And I know that my being in front of you is probably rather unique, just from listening to all the other people that have stood up and addressed issues with you. None of them are necessarily quite like this. I am an elected official. My office is funded by an organization called PAC, the Prosecutor Advisory Council. It's underneath the Attorney General's office. If you're familiar with working with the courts mostly you hear about AOC, the Administrative Office of the Court. That's completely separate from us. So our budgeting and how I make requests, anything I need, I have to go through PAC for. So when you hear me mention PAC, that's what I'm talking about. That is our governing body. Does anybody have any questions about that part so far? Okay, that was honestly, PAC is it's interesting and kind of confusing. It took me a while to learn how to work. But I would like for you to consider the impact that our office has on the community. Obviously, we have an enormous impact on public safety. We have an impact on the individual victims and how they move forward with healing and integrating back. But one thing I think that often is overlooked is the impact we have on your budget. For example, I'll share just two particular cases with you. When I got into office, I reviewed a case, I think it was my second month in. It was an individual that had been in the jail for over 2 years. And when I reviewed it and talked to the law enforcement, talked to the medical examiner, the charge that he was in jail for was a charge that ethically I didn't think we could move forward for, so I immediately moved to dismiss it. So that defendant had been in the jail for over 2 years at the cost of about $28,000 to the county. There's a current case that obviously I can't speak much about. I'm not the prosecutor and I've never been involved in it, but it's a 14-year-old case. set budgets for each respective office years ago, long before I ever even considered running for this office. And the amount that PAC gets from the state is divided up among certain offices. Our office, for whatever reason, didn't get in there and fight with the rest of them and get any more. So if you'll look at Exhibit B, you'll see the complete office budget going back to 2011. I didn't get a printout from PAC from before that, but it's my understanding that that was the same budget several years prior. So it's safe to say, more than 10 years, that's been the budget. If you want to just glance, because I've got a lot of information in there, at Exhibit C, you'll see a thick stack. That's where I have made requests, multiple requests to PAC for increased budget for our office. All of them have been denied. If you look at page, what I have marked C2 and C7, that's where I went to PAC and asked them to cut my salary, to apply my salary so that I could hire another attorney to come work in the office. And I'll explain to you why I did that. I've talked to them about starting a GoFundMe page. I talked to them about private fundraiser. We are in a pretty dire situation, and I'll go on and continue to talk about what makes it so bad. If you want to look at Exhibit A, that's from the AFC Research and Statistics, it'll show you that in 2009, just in Scott County, we had 181 felony cases. Now keep in mind, these are not quick cases to get. These are murders, rapes, child sex cases, things that take an enormous amount of time to research, to investigate, to process. It takes a lot of energy to work with the victims, their families. So we went from 181 cases a year to 328. With no, we had a 4% increase in our payroll budget for the office, and we had an 81% increase in our workload. I have lost 3 prosecutors last year that worked in Scott County because they can't take the workload. The only person that didn't quit that worked in Scott County is Rob Johnson. That's why I made a note in there, and I noted the hours that he put in. Kathy Gregory, quite frankly, I'm afraid she'll leave me any day. She works an average of 15 to 20 hours unpaid every month, overtime. I've often had to kick her out. We're eating gas station dinner at our desk while we're working on things. And I'm fortunate to say to you that I have a very passionate, very committed staff right now, but they're tired. For example, some of our surrounding Commonwealth attorneys' offices have an average of 69 cases per prosecutor. My office has an average of 221 felony cases per prosecutor. In Scott County alone, we have 160 cases, felony cases per prosecutor. It's simply unmanageable in a timely manner. Now, we're managing it, and we're doing well, and we're committed to keeping our standards up, but what that means is that it takes us longer. So this year we've successfully tried child sex cases with a 5-year-old victim of sexual assault by her father. Got the maximum on that. We've worked with arson cases. You can speak with Jim Navy. He was very, very flattering. He said the most he'd ever gotten on an arson case before was 3 years. We got 11 years. We have 28 years on another sexual predator. We have a lot of drug trafficking in this county, and we have been working to charge people with syndication. And what that means is that typically if you're charged with drug trafficking, you could be back. Even if you're convicted, you could be eligible to be back out in 15 to 20% of your sentence. When we charge syndication, you have to serve a minimum of 85%. So for the repeat offenders, traffickers, violent offenders, we're doing great work. But we have hundreds of cases that need to be addressed and need to be addressed faster while these defendants sit in jail. So, obviously my primary concern is always public safety. I'm always talking to our victims, and I'm wanting to make sure that we don't have defendants that are need to be. We're working a lot with external agencies trying to figure out options for nonviolent offenders. How do we that's important to all of you all, but I know that you also have a lot of people that stand here and ask you for money. So if we were to just look at the financial aspect of it, I have a couple of examples I'm about to pass out to you, that if we were just to shave 3 months off of someone's jail time, just 3 months, and we pick 40 of our 328 cases, that would save you more in jail time than I'm going to ask you to pay us. I'm asking you for money to fund. Oh, so let me explain how jail time works. You probably know. But until a case is resolved, the county is responsible to pay the inmates for the medical treatments. Once a case is resolved, whether it's by trial or by plea, the state then picks up the tab for that. So when I say to you, my first example is that the county spent $26,000 on the first defendant I mentioned, and you're up to almost 180 on the second one, and that bill is still going. That's money that if the case had been resolved properly, the state would be paying and take the rest of it off. With more than 300 cases, I'm telling you, I don't think it would be any kind of a stretch at all with an additional prosecutor and additional secretary that we could target a certain number of cases and make sure that we process them faster, saving you paying the bill for people to be in jail. Not to mention the enormous benefit to the victims' family, their community, to the defendant themselves, to get the case resolved. But, so I want to point out that I'm not asking you all to do anything I haven't done myself. I have invested out of my own pocket, and I'm not saying this to be obnoxious, I'm just telling you, I'm committed to this office working well. Over $8,500 in training. I've funded a closet full of clothes and accessories for victims to have, because a lot of them don't have things appropriate to wear to court. I've bought office supplies. Our budget ran out last year mid-June for office supplies, and we didn't get it till August 1st, so everything we had, paper, pens, folders, tape, I bought. I've funded and paid for a victims retreat. I bought a laptop for the office. I bought furniture for the office. I've paid over $750 in grand jury expenses. And I'm telling you this to tell you that we have to operate well because the community depends on it.
Sharon, can I ask you a question? I noticed in your request that, you know, there's a gentleman, Mr. Bobby Stokes, that's the director. Is he still the director?
Yes, sir.
And you made your request last spring for, when's the last time you made a new request to our new, have you made a request to our new Attorney General, Daniel Cameron?
Yes. I've spoken to him personally. I've spoken to him in campaign. I've made.
Did you get any positive, feedback or?
The feedback was go to your county because you can save them money and the state doesn't have it.
Okay.
So think about this.
And in our conversations in the past, I asked, is there any other examples from the state of Kentucky where a physical court helps fund the Commonwealth Attorney's Office? Have you got any additional data on that?
Yes, and I mean, you all can help me get this information because here's the glitch. PAC is, I don't understand why, maybe this is how state government works. This is my first government job. But oddly, our budgets are private. I don't know any other Commonwealth attorney's budget, and they don't know mine. I don't know why. I think it should be transparent, but I don't make the rules. So I requested that information, and I was told I'd have to do an open records request. So I sent in and said, okay, I'm gonna do an open records request.
So it's not really private, it's just subject to open records?
Yes, when I
Okay.
mean private, I mean that I would think as Commonwealth attorneys, why would we not we all see each other's
Right.
caseload. I don't know why we wouldn't see each other's budget.
So I just want to make sure we're clear on the terms. It's
No,
not
you're right.
private, it's subject to open records.
Subject to open
Yeah,
records.
okay.
So when I informed them I was gonna do an open records request, I was told that that would be highly frowned upon. And I said, okay, well.
I'll do it for you.
That would be great. That would be.
What are they gonna do?
To you, nothing. To me, they'll dock my budget. And that's why I haven't done it. And I went to the state, to some of our state representatives will dock your budget proportionally. The only place I can get money from and not get penalized is my county.
So, just, you've presented, facts about the caseloads and all those items. Is there any questions for anyone on the court for Ms. Muse?
So where exactly does your money come from? Does it come from the state budget?
The state budget is
Okay.
allocated to the Attorney General's office, PAC, then, and the way PAC works is we show up at a panel like this, it's made up of 3 county attorneys, 3 Commonwealth attorneys, 3 what they refer to lay people, and a couple of members of PAC council. We submit our request, they vote, they decide, they tell us yes or no.
How long did they have your request before they discuss and vote? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I literally make a request every time. They have a standing request, I call them, I send them emails, there's no confusion about what I need, I present them all the same facts I've presented you. But here's the situation, PAC has X amount of dollars. Those dollars were divided between 57 Commonwealth attorneys' offices years ago. Is that, sorry, something's going off, a beeper. If they were to give me money today, they would literally have to take it away from another Commonwealth attorney. That's the issue. They only have, say they have $100, and they divide that up between 57 offices. If another office comes back and says, I need more money, the only way to get it, unless the state gives them more, is to take it from another office. They're not going to do that. They've told me that. Until the state increases their budget, there is no money to be had. I cannot retain people and say, if you stick with me another 10 years, not only will your work increase by another 81%, 161%, but your pay is, I didn't mention to you that the 4% increase is 11% less than the average rate of inflation over that same period of time. So you lose money by working in my office. You lose money and you work more. The 4 people I've lost have all left because the burden of the Scott County docket, and they all went to Fayette County, where they have 69 cases per attorney instead of 221.
So, Sharon, what would be your formal request to the court for support?
The formal request is it's an invitation. It's an invitation for you to join me in keeping the community safe. And I'm promising you, I can't guarantee anything, but we can structure this in such a way that you can review it and look at it next year and decide, if you're just gonna talk dollars, did we make money for you or didn't we? My request is $65,000 for a full-time prosecutor designated to Scott County only, because remember, my office covers 3 counties, and $35,000 for a designated secretary for Scott County only.
Who pays the benefits, the retirement, everything else? Because the 65,000 salary is not
Right.
just.
Right. No, I've asked PAC if I could get funding from the county for the salary, would they be able to match with the benefits? They said basically come back if that happens, but it is an option, so I was gonna ask them first. Because the way it would work is I don't touch any money. If you choose to fund us, it would be sent to PAC. It's not to be distributed statewide, it's earmarked for this office. They distribute it, they handle all the bookkeeping, all the everything, and because of that, in my opinion, when I go and I see how they don't have, because I go to all the meetings, and everybody that makes requests get denied, everybody, because the money's not there. But I've noticed that there are a list of positions in other offices where it says no funding, but they have benefits. So I asked them, could I have another office's benefits until they are able to fund that position, so that the county would be providing part and PAC would provide part. I have no say in whether or not they do that, but that was my hope.
So,
What is PAC doing right now in lobbying the legislature since it is budget season? Because if they're not down there.
They are down there. I've been down there. Most of us go majority of their time right now, not in the courtroom, but in Frankfurt.
Because I would think if 57 Commonwealth attorneys got together and started making issues in their communities with regards to underfunding, that the House and the Senate would have no choice but to listen because of the cases that you try.
Well, I would think so, and you know what they say to me? They say the county would do the same. That's exactly what they say to me. And
But
I will get,
The county would do the same,
meaning,
if she comes before us, we would,
says, here I am,
Yeah.
look at what we do. It's pretty significant. It's important for the community. And not only is it important for the community, but the math works.
Mr. Hostetler.
Couple things. You're also in Woodford and Bourbon. Have you presented to their courts by chance?
Well, I have talked to them, but the problem is Woodford and Bourbon are less than half the burden of Scott County. So the Woodford County docket is not a particular challenge, and Bourbon County is actually doable. That's why whatever money we get from Scott would stay in Scott, because the growth in Scott is.
Is your office, is your office still in Woodford?
There's an office in Woodford, and we inherited, I call it a storage.
And we pay for that monthly,
Yes.
small office space here off of North Hamilton.
And I have,
When I say we, the fiscal court.
but I have talked PAC into moving our office here because more than 50% of our cases are here, which means 50% of our law enforcement victims, they're all here. We want it to be here. So that was an enormous task to get them to move it, but it's moved. And I've been told maybe within 6 months we'll be here. That'll save you a small amount of rent that you pay. But to make it clear, I'm asking for one prosecutor.
So if you got your office moved here, are those dollars that the county could no longer put in? Do you still want that space?
No, sir.
Okay, just a,
do you know the amount on that rent off the top of your head?
we can get it and share it.
$1,000 a month, I think.
So,
I don't.
We'll have to, I
Okay,
don't have it.
I have to go back and look.
I think it's,
I was thinking
Oh.
700 or so.
Okay, is it
I was
that low?
thinking like 500.
Office in that building, and it was something like 7.
We'll get that and share it with the court. But what other questions exist? You know, I appreciate the detail you've gone into and the efforts to present your case.
so
Rick?
you have a spot in Woodford and Bourbon that you can work out of.
In Bourbon, we typically just
Well, you said a storage
sit in my
closet.
laptop. The storage closet is here. That's what I jokingly call it. It's one room. It's filled with files, and we have to.
So where's home
go
base?
out in the bathroom. We call it at Woodford County
But you're trying to move,
here, just because the.
has that been approved? Did I understand you right? That's been approved?
Yes, sir. I got that approved.
So,
Last year. But I started talking to them about that before I got sworn in. But I don't think I ever answered your question. You asked me, do other.
Yeah, I was coming.
okay.
They do. I know, and the only reason I know this is because I've asked the prosecutors, but for both Fayette and Louisville, they match their funding by half. So my budget from PAC is 272, which would mean, you know, if it was the same thing here, it would be 136. There are smaller counties that do that too, but again, because I've not done the open records requests, I don't know. But I would invite you all to do that, because that would help. I'm not trying to hide anything. I don't have access to it.
What, yes, what other questions are there?
I have a question. I like the idea and I understand it. The only thing I don't get is if we spend $8,200 a month and assuming we don't get into benefits package, I just don't see the math yet on how we save that much. I know we can, in theory, say we'll save money, but I'm not sure.
Well, I guess all I can do is ask you to trust your other elected official and say, we're gonna do our best, and if you don't like it after a year, you cut our funding. But I do believe that, you know, working with the jail, I to find research to give you something tangible. Our office is not able to give you a printout of the average stay in jail.
But you think after a year, you can say, here are the numbers?
After a year, there's two things that would need to happen. One of the reasons for the secretary is there's a great software program that I have been trying to learn, but it's when I spend 80 hours a week in a case, and then, anyway, I haven't had time to learn it yet. That would be, this secretary's job would be to incorporate this software, which would allow us to generate reports to say, here's how long this case took, here's how long this case took, here's how long this person stayed in jail.
Right.
So that next year, we can give you something really that you can look at. Right now, I don't have that to give to you. I don't think the jail can provide any kind of a report that says, here's the average stay. We don't have the capacity. But there's several things. If I were to have the same amount of prosecutors in my office that most of our surrounding offices have, I would have an additional 9.5 full-time prosecutors.
When you say surrounding, what does that mean? Because Fayette surrounds us, and we are not comparable to Fayette.
Well,
And
maybe
we're not really
other-
comparable to anybody around us.
That's the problem, is that when I try to find a county, and that's the problem with PAC, I say to them every time, our growth is explosive. And they say, hey, everybody says that. And I'm like, well, who do I need you to talk to believe me when I say that? And you can look at our numbers. We are 81% more cases than we were just 10 years ago. So you're right, it's not comparable. And because my information is limited, I can't give you some answers that I understand why you want them. But I agree that we're not really in any way comparable to anybody else, but if you just look at the basic, how many prosecutors are prosecuting how many cases, that's comparable across the state. And we're 69, I looked at other counties, and again, I'm having to estimate because I don't have the information.
So moving forward,
Yeah.
the court considers, we get several requests every year, and we compile all the requests. We're in the process of today's the deadline essentially for our department heads and constitutional officers to submit budget requests. Over the course of the next week, staff here will compile all those requests for our budget committee to review, and then we start deliberating and trying to look at things holistically, and then forecast our revenues to try to balance revenues with expenditures. I don't know how else to say it. But looking at needs and trying to prioritize, those things, there's no question what you presented describes a real need. It's just, as we still, you look at how you've traditionally been funded and at those things, and this would be doing something totally new.
Would be.
So, any other comment or question or anything else you'd like to share?
Got two more things.
Judge, if I could say, just from a
I was about to say.
historical perspective, there's no doubt that the docket has absolutely exploded. The cases we handle have increased, I don't know how many fold in the last 10 years. And of course, a fair amount of what we do goes on to the Commonwealth Attorney. So my guess is you all probably do handle as many cases per prosecutor as anybody in the state. That would not surprise me in the least. We're out of courtroom space and prosecutors and everything. So I don't doubt that there's a need for that.
Well, I was just thinking about Kelly's comment, which I agree with, trying to establish a baseline. We're going to spend this, but there's all that also little caveat for me. There's that personal side of the victims, and when these cases stretch out that long, I've actually had folks talk to me about that, and of course I just try to comfort them. I don't know how the process works, and so, but this is actually eye-opening for me to see this length and know that victims, especially folks, rape victims, those kind of victims, well, any kind of victim actually, but some of those cases you hear about and families are suffering just to try to get through the process.
Yes, they are.
To get some kind of resolution, whatever that turns out to be, so that it can somehow try to start putting that in the background. But as long as that thing's out there, that's the only other side. I mean, I agree with Kelly trying to look at the numbers and.
And I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it if I didn't have the numbers. I just think it's an easy sell if there's something that says, oh, this gets offset.
Well,
that's all I'm saying. But
I agree with you, but when I looked at the first page or second page with the caseload increase, I can only imagine how many families in our county are struggling to deal with it going through the process.
Mr. Livingston.
It's very compelling. It is because, I mean, you know, we have moms and dads and children and spouses and you know, heaven forbid that ever happens to somebody close to our family.
Right.
Setting the emotional part aside this is another problem with state government. This is another issue, unfunded, that is driving your request down to the local level.
Yes.
That's a problem. And setting the emotion aside, I don't like the idea because it opens up the scenario of the state government saying, hey, guess what? We can sweep this money and we'll just have the counties funded going forward. Because in the scheme of things, $272,000 for your office is not a ton of money. In our own budget, much less in the state budget. Because what is the state budget? $3 trillion or something like that? 2 to 3 trillion? So this problem is much deeper than the emotional, the physical, the victim side. It is a political problem within Frankfurt that needs to be talked about and fleshed out publicly. That we're doing all these other things, we're asking for gas tax, we're asking for sales taxes, we're driving for all these other things in life, but those that are the victims, the least, that can't protect themselves or are unable to protect those around them, that's a problem at the state level. And I am tired of the state level of where we're having to step in to fix things at the local level. Because probably since I've been on here for 10 years, we've taken compensating rate on property taxes. Well, that's money you never get back because our rate on property taxes has gone down every year. Net profits have virtually gone away from what they were 10, 12, 15 years ago compared to what they are now. So even as our revenue is growing, our expenses are growing beyond our revenue. And our facilities issues are, hopefully we have solved part of the problem with our pay and benefits. But you understand where I'm going with this. This is a state issue that needs to be addressed at that level. And as much as I hate to say this, I think that this should be brought to the governor's office and discussed from top down from there and included in a budget and have the governor talk with the legislature to handle it. Because this is opening up a box that if we start funding a portion of something that the state is supposed to, and I'm assuming that it's constitutionally mandated, I don't know, but if it's something that they're supposed to, if it's not constitutionally mandated, then they can just pull away from it. They don't have to fund it. And then all of a sudden, we're left holding the bag for all 57 prosecutors across the state.
There's several pieces of this that
I agree with you. It's tough, but it is a state funding problem. And it needs to be fixed at that level, and we got to figure out how to make that happen.
I would suggest that it's a very real problem for our community. Let me tell you when you talk about historic funding, when I took office, we have over 10 child rape cases that had not been processed, one for 5 years, one for 6 years. We have a sodomy and attempted murder of a child not looked at in 12 years. Now, I'm not telling you that's how I'm going to run this office because I won't. I have to not just deal with the cases I have now, but I inherited an enormous backlog. I inherited 350 cases that have never been presented Every grand jury we've ever met with is willing to talk to you. They all wanted to come today. I'm like, no, I don't want to overcrowd the room. But yes, you are correct. This is a state budget problem. But the reality is it is felt every day in this community, and it is felt with your budget. And so you can choose. I mean, obviously, it's your choice. You have a lot of things to balance. You have things that I can't begin to understand, and all of the things that you cover as the county with your budget. But I would offer to you that there is nothing more important than the safety of the people that live in your community, the people that voted for you and that voted for me. And I guarantee you they voted for us to keep them safe. Yes.
There are several pieces of this that just, it's like a Rubik's Cube. I mean, it's like we've got squares on each side of this thing. We need to get them to line up. You're sitting here asking us for more funding with the inferring that if you had more funding, you could hire more attorneys, you could increase the speed of which these cases are tried and get these people off of the county jail system into the state prison system faster, which would reduce our costs at the county jail.
Correct.
Okay, I can see that. On the flip side of that, I just came from 3 days of magistrate training, where they're talking about taking a felony from $500 to $900, which would increase the number of minor felons or non-felons in the county jail system, which would double that. So I'm sitting here faced with, okay, I want to give you money, but then these guys are going to double it up on us. It's tough. And I really think this, Sharon, I think that we'd be best to call Damon Thayer's office. We have 3 state representatives representing Scott County. We need to contact them. They have the power to put money in a budget
And when
for
that,
the state.
and you're right, and when it goes to the state, I have no control over whether it comes here. That's
well-
that's when I spoke to them and said, I have talked to people at the state level and say, fund my office.
Mhm.
I went to PAC and said, hey, you told me to go talk to elected, I'm doing it. I have no time to spend, but I'm calling and banging it out as hard as I can. And they're like, great. And I said, so they're considering, talking to me about money for this office. And they said, no, it comes to PAC, and PAC distributes it. I don't get any of that.
They can put shoestrings on just about anything. I've seen it.
I'm just explaining to you, this is how it works. If I,
And I'm with David. I'm with David. You presented a compelling case. And I can see where this would increase the operational tempo of the county attorney's office. I'm sorry, of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, to get more cases tried, more cases pushed through, get the backlog straightened out. But once we open up this can of worms where it comes out of our pocket, next year they'll be asking for more. The year after that, they'll be asking for more. And then pretty soon we'll be funding a pile of it.
from who, from me?
It won't break my heart to give you the money, okay?
And it won't break the bank.
And certainly it won't break the bank.
I know that.
But I think somebody needs to go up to Frankfurt to PAC with a Louisville Slugger and wake a few people up.
They are. I'm not joking. I am exhausted from asking for money. Why do you think I asked that they literally cut my salary in half? Do you know anybody that's done that? Do you know anybody that went to state government and said, pay it out of my pocket?
So is this a request
Something for the people
for
that live here.
This
2021?
this
So
is,
there'll be more?
right, and that's why, yeah. So you formally made a compelling request. That information will be part of the deliberation that we make with the budget committee, and then going forward, I myself will reach out to Senator Thayer and Representative Pratt myself, and
That would be great.
and inquire about what David and Bill have mentioned as well. And
We all should.
yeah, and
Appreciate that.
that's where, I think we can all agree that it's something that needs to be considered and discussed. Mr. Burke.
If we do this, we almost have to do it for 2 years until we get to the next budget cycle, the next state budget cycle.
Well, that
That sounds
could
great to
be.
me. Thank you. Great idea.
With that said, Sharon,
Oh, yeah.
Well, I thought you
Rand,
liked that.
Rand would like to say one thing before.
I just hate jumping off this canoe when we're halfway across the creek, you know? I mean, that's-
Rand would like to share one item before we move on.
You know, last year Joanne Sinkhorn retired, and we did not replace her. I don't plan on replacing her. Now, she was paid part by the county and part by the state. And, you know, maybe later Jeff can tell you the impact on our budget. But whatever that county component was, you know, we could decrease our budget by that amount because I think we've spread out the duties that she had, and, you know, we're getting by without that position. So that might pick up some of the, you know.
Well, I'm listening to our Commonwealth's attorney, and it sounds to me like I don't know if you've tracked this or not, but you've spent multiple hours fighting this battle of funding. Really, it sounds like to no avail. And it sounds like from the looks of this sheet you gave us, decades, you went all the way back to 1999. This has been an issue, apparently. I'm just wondering how many hours you spent fighting this battle when you could have been prosecuting cases.
I appreciate that a lot. I spend a lot of time just getting our office in shape, finding victims, and we no joke, an average week for me last year was 92 hours a week.
One last thing, can you find out, with regards to retirement and benefits and all that, because it would be worthless to even consider if they say, we won't pay them, because then you're talking about 82% approximately on top of what you're asking.
With that said, we'll be in touch, and you're welcome to share that.
Well, this is just for y'all to keep.
Okay.
It's basically a breakdown of what I said, and it shows you where all the
Okay.
exhibits play in.
And then as you're handing that out, a few weeks ago, Ms. Muse, Rand Marshall, Rick Hostetler, and myself sat in a presentation from with a group called the Isaiah House, and we've talked with the Isaiah House, we've talked with the Shepherd's House about the potential of partnering together with a day reporting program, an IOP, Intense Outpatient Program, and I'm going to ask you to possibly come back when we bring this up. My plan is to have the Isaiah House and Shepherd's House come to court, and I might even call a special called workshop just to have them to present information before March is out. And I might ask you to come back and share your thoughts.
I'd be happy.
Rand will be here, of course, to share his thoughts on how that could impact the judicial process and such. So I appreciate you coming here. You presented a very compelling case, and yes, everybody on this court shares your concern about safety and well-being of everyone in our community.
Hey, Judge, I might also suggest for the meeting you're talking about, potentially, getting the jailer's input, if he's available or if he's willing.
100%.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Because he'll know some of that impact that maybe we won't see.
Our goal there is to help individuals, but also positively impact our jail population, so there's not as much stress there as well. Would you agree with those two priorities? So,
And I'm glad to participate, but it will, again, take more time and energy out of our, it's easier for us to put them in jail. I don't have to monitor them, I don't have to worry about it.
But I don't know if that's the best thing for individuals.
No, I'm saying to you, it's more time and energy out of our office, which I'm almost out of, but I want to do it. I think it's a great plan.
I think that, I'm glad you feel that way, but, I think what we've talked about, nonviolent, drug-related offenders that are creating crimes against themselves, essentially, that we could help with. So, Sharon, I know, and Rob as well, thank you for your service to Scott County and what you do. And we won't, we'll deliberate about this and try to gather as much information and look at it very seriously at your request. Okay.
Talk about this all day. If you
I know
haven't
you
gotten
can.
it.
You don't have time.
Yeah.
chance, but I do because it'll make time for me, right?
All right. I'm going to move to number 13. I'd like to ask Jared Holland to address transfer station application determination per ordinance 19-04. We have our guests from Rumpke here and appreciate your all's patience. Jared, will you share with the court, you had a meeting on Monday?
Yes, that was designated in ordinance 1904, section 4, and all the folks were able to make except for a couple, but I talked to them on the phone, and it was to go over if the site met the requirements per the ordinance. And after discussion, the folks that were there thought it met the requirements of the ordinance. And at this time, I'd like to bring Rumpke up here if you all have any further questions. I think it's about this time to possibly look at approving the application.
So administratively,
Yes.
The ordinance requirements have been met by the application.
Yes.
In your judgment.
Yes.
In recommendation that your judgment would be that we approve the application as presented.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Rumpke, thank you all for coming again. What questions do you all have? And Mr. Rumpke, would you like to share anything additional information?
No, I'm just excited to be here and bring you guys today and asking for the approval of our site here on Houston Way. Really looking forward to, investing in the community and doing something good for everybody around here.
Mr. Hostetler.
Judge, a couple things. We got the opportunity, myself, Alvin, Judge, and Jared, I think. Well, that little field trip, I think you talked about it at our
Site visit,
Yeah.
Cincinnati.
At their recycling / transfer station, or did I say that right? Pretty big facility. This one won't be that big. It'll be dedicated basically to transferring trash. So when the folks from Rumpke first came to us at first meeting, just to let the court know, I thought about it a few days and talked with our judge and Jared, and so I asked Jared to do an open records request in regards to Rumpke's operations in Kentucky in regards to transfer stations, so we could compare apples to apples. Did I say that right, Jared?
Well, trash to trash.
Yeah, well, rotten apples, rotten apples. Anyhow, so they came back with no NOVs in that open records request. The state actually, I asked Jared to go back 5 years, and he did. In fact, the first comment from the state was, "You'll have to give us a little bit of time," because it was kind of a big look back, and that was the result. 0 NOVs. So I wanted to make the court aware of that because I thought that was something we should do.
Doing our due diligence
Right.
to protect our community.
So, and then quickly a comment, when we went on the field trip, so to speak, very well-run facility, I thought, well-kept. We surveyed the grounds just a little bit, and we were inside the building. That it all happens probably an hour or better, maybe better than that.
I didn't observe any trash outside.
Right.
Well maintained, all those items.
And the most, well, anyone that I talked to about this who contacted me, one of their first questions, are we going to smell it? So I had my centimeter going, and we didn't. I was in the facility, around the facility. So, and the big reason is the trash doesn't stay there. At the closing of business, there's no trash in the facility. Correct?
Correct, yeah. You do that for general housekeeping, for rodents, or any odors or potential fires. So at the end of the day, you have all the trash out. It eliminates all these risks, and it keeps the site clean. Yeah.
Then the building itself is closed, locked down, and also one other comment. I did sit in on this meeting Monday, and I think our fire chief had he's already stepped out, had a really good question, and he was concerned about sprinklers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you guys are planning on sprinkling the building. He had a good question on that, and there were some others that had questions, but that was a big one for fire.
And the potential exists when you're handling solid municipal waste that, from what you explained to me, like batteries.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
Batteries, yeah.
Batteries will cause, and that's what the potential exists. But by installing a sprinkler system, you want to negate the potential of that. You don't have a magic wand that would eliminate all potential fires.
Correct.
But you're doing the right thing and such. So,
Adam, can you remind me, I know you've already addressed this once, what will be the hours and days that yard potentially will be open?
So we're looking at, main operation is going to be Monday through Friday. We're going to have a hauling operation, so there are going to be some trucks there. Then there'd be mechanics that would work on those trucks. The mechanics would be night because the trucks are on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So mechanics would be there at night. The facility would be shut. The gates to public would be closed, probably 4 o'clock or something like that. And then maybe half a day on Saturday, giving residents an opportunity to bring debris. They're doing yard cleanup or something around their house and they want to drop it off. They could come to the transfer station and drop it off.
Okay.
So that's typically what it is. It's a Monday through Friday, and then half a day Saturday. Yeah. So at the site also, we put drop-off containers where if somebody is cleaning out their house and they have extra cardboard, they moved in or something like that, and they want to get rid of their boxes, we'll have containers there that they could deposit their recycling. Yeah.
that would be a plus.
Yeah.
And potential, how many full-time positions based out of this?
Roughly 20-ish, something like that.
20 we didn't have.
Yeah.
In my mind. What other questions from anybody on the court?
Is the route the trucks leave, as we discussed when we first talked about this, so still the same landfill they're going to? And
Yeah, so we have, this site is about midway between 2 landfills that we own, one being in Montgomery County, one in Pendleton County. Routing for the trucks going to Pendleton County would be through Cynthiana and up 27. That way, that's the fastest route to our landfill. And then going to Montgomery County would be down 75, about that way.
And they get right on 75 right there.
Yeah, right.
So, what a good question. I appreciate you bringing that up, Kelly. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering, I know you guys pick up locally now, and obviously that's, I'm assuming, going either to Pendleton County or Montgomery County with those trucks, I guess.
Yeah, so right now, Scott County trash goes actually to Montgomery County.
Well, I've just,
Yeah.
so I'm just wondering, would that have any, being your trucks would be your smaller trucks, your neighborhood trucks, I don't know what the term is for them, that would cut their route down considerably to come to you? Would that have any effect on the citizens' rates? Just wondering.
We talked a little bit about employment and stuff like that, finding workforce. Right now, we're spending a lot of time trucks driving every day to their route, so, it could be an hour. You essentially, I don't think it would affect rates because wages are going up, truck expenses are going up, health insurance, all the benefits are going up. But their rates are pretty flat over the past 10 years. They go up incrementally with inflation, but it's not going to have a drastic impact. But having the trucks closer could help keep the expenses down of traveling to the route. So there is potential savings.
The positive impact would be greater than the negative impact.
Yeah.
Without any question. So, just one additional thing. Rumpke now handles 85+% of our county residential pickup. And we had a customer contact Jared and I earlier this week and had an issue. It was immediately addressed. Not saying that it's going to be the case every time, but it mattered you know, about being addressed. And it was addressed professionally and handled, and I think we're getting a good business partner. So,
Thank you.
And along those lines, Judge, I just for the public's benefit, Jared, you made an inquiry into Rumpke's compliance history, and I came back clean. Thank you.
so, what other questions or comments? Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the application as complete?
So move.
So moved by Mr. Wallace, is seconded by Mr. Livingston. Any other question or comment? All those in favor? Any in negative? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. You all appreciate the work you've gone into to do that. Yes, sir.
Take a quick break.
Yes, sir. I will not say, we're going to make, we're just going to have a brief recess. Brief recess. Try to come back in just a couple minutes. old Bill. Well, we're waiting on Mr. Burke.
He thought it was over. Didn't he?
No, he left his stuff, so.
Well, he's getting old. He may have forgot it.
Golly.
It's a tough crowd.
You watching the game today?
What game?
Well, you got your UK gear on, so.
From our agenda, and I'm going to ask Jeff Mudrack to address the court in regards to an item, and then I'm going to skip to after him to Mr. Murphy, who sat patiently. Murphy Group Architects. I apologize, Mr. Murphy, for holding you here, but we appreciate your help. Mr. Mudrack's got some information related to COVID-19 and in our anthem. Response to that.
Yeah, Anthem sent out a communication yesterday we received through our broker asking how we wanted to handle COVID-19 testing. And what Anthem is recommending is that even some insured customers waive that member out-of-pocket cost for COVID-19 diagnostic testing. I've already sent a note back to them yesterday afternoon saying, yes, we will cover COVID-19 testing at 100%. So what I'm going to do is send out a note well, as soon as I can here today, and let all the employees know that if by some chance they do need that diagnostic test, they will be covered 100%. So they haven't got to have any hesitancy for deciding if they should have that test done or not. So that's just wanted to share that news with the court.
I don't think there's any action required from us, but just wanted to share that out of an abundance of caution and trying to eliminate any barrier that might keep an individual, if they felt they needed to get tested, that would allow them to be tested. So he's going to share that.
Do you know what the cost of the test is?
I do not know the cost, but they're estimating, I mean, I have no idea. I mean, they're estimating what the per member per month fee would be roughly 8 cents per member per month might be the cost of this. And it just depends on how many tests you have to do. I mean,
I didn't know how much per test might cost because nobody's ever said that in the press.
I don't think they know yet, honestly.
And where do we get tested?
What's that?
Where do we get tested? We have to go to a doctor's office?
I would
a
assume that the
hospital?
doctor's offices and hospitals would have those kits at some point. I have no idea how they're going to disperse those.
It would be, I attended a meeting at the health department yesterday, and your doctor would test you for type A and B first, and it would be up to them whether you need further testing to go to the hospital.
Okay.
So thank you all for that update, and thanks very much. Tim, if you'd come on up. There's two pieces to the conversation that Tim's going to share with us today. One is a recommendation for a change order on the clock dials themselves, which amounts to approximately $20,000.
Correct.
And just after getting those down in Campbellsville Industries, being able to look at them closely up front, that they were brittle, yellowed, and just would not
Falling off as well.
Yeah, the numbers falling off.
Right.
So I'm going to let you take it from here on regards.
What is the construction? Are they fiberglass or?
They were plexiglass.
Oh, well, that's never intended to last forever.
Right. Well, and it does. So the sun ages it gets brittle. It's probably at the end of its lifespan. So yes, we took every precaution to protect those as we took them out, but as we then got them out and began to take a look at them, like the judge said, we've probably gotten all the mileage we're going to get out of those faces. Now, we could put them back in, we could make some quick repairs, but no one could say how long then they might last before you have to go back up there. So it's an opportune time. If we're ever going to do it, the time would be now to go ahead and get this done as part of the overall work.
So what questions does anyone have in regards to the clock face change order? And the 4 that we have are sitting there in Campbellsville. You know, our conversation before was if we elected to go with this change order, then we would take those 4, give 1 to the museum here, I think, and then possibly, you know, put the other 3 up for bid. You know, so
The new ones will be made out of plexiglass
They
again?
will as well, yes.
But it'll be 20-year newer formulation?
Right, correct.
Okay.
question?
So you'll know, plexiglass 30 years ago, okay, was a great product, except it proved to be photochemically reactive, which means it ages and turns brown and brittle with age in direct sunlight. And the Army discovered this the hard way when they put plexiglass vision blocks in tanks. And then they had some 15 and 20-year-old tanks, and the guy walked up one day and tapped one with a hammer, and he just disintegrated. And so we went through about a $40 million replacement program.
Not asking for that much.
Tim's asking for $20,000, $362.
With the newer formulation. And so if these clock faces are 20 or 30 years old, yeah, they fall in that category.
So, question, Alvin, you had a question?
You just, the cost, I just want to reiterate.
$20,362, and that's for the change order in respect to the clock dials. And part of the existing agreement always intended to get new clock hands.
Correct.
And those are
That was-
aluminum.
Yes, that was
All
already
right.
in the project.
All right. And then the second, is there a motion to accept that change order? Motion for Mr. Burke, a second for Mr. Corman. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes to accept that change order.
I'm assuming these will be made by a local sign company or,
You know, I didn't ask how they're going to source it, but I can certainly find that out.
And then lastly, you know, I shared pictures, and Tim, looks like you've made copies.
I brought copies.
We might as well distribute them. I shared those electronically, and then JR has also gone up and done an inspection and taken pictures as well. These pictures show the underneath and top side. Is this the level that the actual striking mechanism and the bell is sitting on?
And the mechanism that drives the hand.
Okay. So you have some pictures there, and this portion, Tim, can you help me? Is it $8,633?
No, and I think that falls on me, Judge. So they gave us 2 options here. So the difficulty with this is, so to answer your question, Judge, to replace this roofing deck was actually $28,800. Yes, sir. Then they gave us an alternate for the $8,006, which was painting the louvers. So I misread that, misinformed you. So it's a significantly larger number than you were expecting.
And Tim and I shared this via email. We do not have to vote on this today. I don't know if you had a chance to read that email. I just thought, well, Tim was available. Tim could talk. And Bill, go ahead.
Judge, I can't see any common sense reason why we should wait.
Well, that's why I brought it to you. You know my style of trying to present information and letting you all talk and
Having said that, one of my constituents is a materials expert when it comes to rotten wood.
I think I know that gentleman.
I think we should get his approval on this too.
I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna ask to deny that request.
What was the total cost on, this is about replacing the floor part, right?
It is.
What's
So
the total cost?
$28,837.
No, that's including the clock faces and the floor?
No.
No.
It's just $28,000 for a floor?
It's for the flooring and the roofing.
And
What are you gonna make? What's it gonna be, steel?
What we've proposed is to essentially make another roof deck. So we're putting a new roof where the cupola has been removed, and it will come back. This roof is the next one down, which is at the bottom of the louver, so that next tier. And that's where the clockwork sit, okay? This roof is only exposed by the weather that comes in through those louvers, okay? We don't have direct rainfall. We already have a roof above it that'll be new when we're done. The difficulty is you can look at this level and see that rainwater is blowing in through those louvers, resting and has nowhere to go. It's rotted out I think someone at some point in the past may have tried to put a little bit of kind of sheet metal in there. That's all deteriorated, all the corners. So the difficulty with this small little piece, I mean, it's not all that large when you think about it, is the complexity of working around all the components that frame this. So there's framing underneath, there's also framing on top, which supports the load of the mechanics of the clockworks, okay? And they're having to basically work around all those components above. We're replacing the plywood deck with new 3/4 inch. There's a 1/2 inch that somebody went up there and added at some point in the past. Replacing that proposal here with 3/4 inch plywood, then putting down an insulation base, and then a roof on top of that that works around all those components. The tricky part is it also has to work in around the louvers themselves. So they will be pulled off so that we can get the roof underneath those, so that we don't have a weak point where if we just took our roof over to the louver, the water would just run in and then run out underneath us. So the louvers have to be pulled off. So that's contributing to a bit of the cost of this. But if we're gonna do it, we ought to do it right, and we ought to go all the way out to the edge and put a good roof on there.
Will this prevent this from happening in the future?
It will for a good long time. That roof will last another 25, 30 years.
What other questions? We do not, as I said in my email, and as I just said, I do not, we do not have to have an action on this, but of course, we would probably have to have an action on the 26th of March. What's going to change, the question is, kind of like what you're saying, Bill, what's going to change between now and March 26th?
Hey, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Do you foresee any other issues?
We
Now that
don't,
the-
there's nothing that's been brought up. Now that we've taken the cupola apart, we have all the components. That's the only thing the contractor's brought back. And on this one, the difficulty for me is I would love to see it done because it's the right time to do it. You're gonna have all the equipment there because they're gonna have to bring the crane back to take the louvers off. So they're gonna do this when they reset the tower, would be the time to do it. If we don't do it now and you delayed, you certainly can, but then it would, to do it properly, you'd have to bring a crane back and this cost would be more.
And looking at the louvers, we had the courthouse painted this past summer, and, they didn't report any structural, issues with the louvers. I don't know what the louvers are made of.
They're very thick wood.
And of course, good maintenance is very important to make sure that they stay, in a good shape. But I just want to make sure, like, if we do this, everything then up there will be.
That was my question, yeah. So you don't see any problem with the existing louvers? You're gonna remove them, get your flashing, that's what you're trying to do?
Yes, that's exactly
Get the
right.
roof flashed in under those instead of,
And then set them back on top.
right.
Bill.
We have an old saying that we've cut this board 3 times now and it's still too short. And I would rather see us just go ahead and do this right the first time. I don't see any benefit in waiting. And I hate to build a new house on a bad foundation. I'm gonna make the motion, we go ahead and we approve this.
There's a motion on the floor. A second from Mr.
I
Lyons.
did have a question though. First, the louvers, what purpose do they serve? If the water damage came in through those, could they be
Other than being
sealed so that we do not have that water infiltration in the future?
I can't answer that question. I think they're mostly decorative. I don't know if at some point in the past there was a reason other than
The sound?
the sound. It lets the sound transmit out.
I've got fake louvers on the front of my house.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? This work will be finished middle of June, maybe?
Right.
Because this is adding 10 days on.
It is add 10 days to their contract.
So most likely, the final payment for this wouldn't probably be due until after July 1.
Correct.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
I will let the contractor know. Thank you, everybody.
Tim, thank you.
Yep. Good to see you.
I'll have my materials expert take a look at these pictures.
What was the amount?
I've got it right here.
28.
837.
Next, just EMS EMS temporary assignment. Brandon, thanks for sticking with us.
Absolutely. Good morning, Judge, Magistrates. I have an employee that will be going out on FMLA for approximately the 12 weeks. While this employee is off, I would like to reassign one of my part-time employees to fill that full-time position. Hopefully you received the information through email. You will notice there is a change in salary. They will go from their part-time salary to what our base full-time salary is. So they will be paid on the 24, 48-hour schedule. That's what they'll be assigned to. They will not be receiving any benefits due to the fact that the employee has benefits through their current other full-time employer. We already pay retirement on this employee, so the retirement will continue. That's the only thing. So.
How do we
Questions?
understand retirement?
Because they were already in the CERS retirement system with their current full-time employer.
Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions?
Well, just briefly, I talked to Brandon about this, and I was just, I thought it was a misprint to start with, and I had forgotten about the 24-hour full-time workday, and that was the difference between his part-time pay being $13.25 as opposed to his full-time dropping to $10.50, but there's that overtime.
That is correct, because with the 24/48, they already have the built-in overtime.
Right. So, anyhow, I had seen that and thought it was backwards, but obviously I wasn't, so.
Anyone would like to make a motion?
Motion.
Motion for Mr. Corman, second for Mr. Lyons. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very
Thank you. Brandon, you might stay, no, just hang around, just because we're going to talk a little bit about preparedness. And next, I'd like to bring up a letter that was shared with you from me to the Governor's Office of Ag Policy. And I'm essentially working with the Bluegrass Area Development District, and we're doing a mini regional feasibility study that we would like to see if the Governor's Office would partially fund in a 50-50 matching project. And what we're trying to look at is the regional broadband feasibility study with 4 counties, and we would use this kind of as a roadmap for the bigger 17-county feasibility study in the future, hopefully. But Fayette County, Woodford, Bourbon, and Scott are looking to do this project together and make the request of the Governor's Office for Ag Policy. Scott County Fiscal Court would pledge $3,900, $3,973.40 towards this effort. The project is consistent with the economic development strategy, goals, and objectives in a regional comprehensive economic development strategy, and will be great benefit to the more rural areas of our county. And essentially what we're going to get from this is a ballpark, really good number on expanding broadband in Scott County they'll give us a number and a dollar that it would cost, and then recommend some possible avenues to pursue it. So I think this is a bargain, and I'd like you to consider it. I'd like to bring everything to you all, and any comments or questions in regards to it?
Do you need a motion?
A motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion for Mr. Livingston, second for Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. I'll share that today with the Bluegrass ad. Now, moving on down, courthouse office surplus, magistrates. No, we're not surplusing our magistrates.
How much are we worth?
What was on that list, JR? Just those desks and
They have it.
that you all have everything on it.
They asked, some of that old video equipment, a couple of TVs.
Yeah, old stuff. But so with that said, is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Livingston, second from Mr. Hostetler, all right?
Yeah, no problem.
Second from Mr. Hostetler. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
What about?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
missed number six.
Planning Commission, I have shared two names with you. Joe Kane shared an additional name. I think it's Max Stone, but I never did. I've not been able to get not gotten documentation or bio. I spoke with Joe Kane last night. Joe Kane says if we want to table this to try to get more names until the 26th, it is not an issue. So it's here. You have two names. One is Mary Singer. The other is Mr. John Carter. Shared both of those bios with you. But as I said, if you want to table this till the 26th, we can certainly do it.
Did you want a chance to look at that third name that?
That would be, I don't think, there's never anything wrong with trying to get a
Motion
little.
to table.
Are they short?
There's 9 members, and they said it was not actually that they wouldn't meet again before we meet again, so there's a motion to table. Is there a second? All right, second for Mr. Livingston. All those in favor? Any opposed? We tabled that. And then new business public comment. I just want to start with, and Rand, you might want to share with us, got correspondence from Supreme Court of Kentucky related to the COVID-19 event, and essentially our judicial courts are shutting down. Rand, would you like to share?
Yeah, let me read just one paragraph, because I think it gives a broad kind of outline of what's going on. With the exception of emergency matters, domestic violence hearings, and evidentiary hearings in criminal cases, all in-person appearances for civil and criminal dockets shall be canceled. Judges are encouraged to use telephonic or video technology for all necessary hearings, including arraignments and mental health hearings. So, and this is from the Supreme Court. They've made this rule. So, at least for now, we will only be doing those things in court that are absolutely necessary. This is through April 10th, and I guess it could be extended if they felt like it was appropriate. So we kind of talked about this yesterday at the meeting at the health department. Wondered what we might do, and this tells us, except for what we absolutely have to do through April 10th, we won't be doing court matters.
What questions?
In person.
Well, there are some things that have to be done. You know, if people are in jail, obviously they have to be arraigned and given bond consideration. I don't know that we're set up to do anything, you know, by video. And I think it says, you know, telephonically, so that may be possible. And some things will have to be done, you know, domestic violence hearings, those kinds of things. So, but unless it's absolutely necessary, it looks like we won't be doing it.
So here's my concern, and Jailer Broyles, will you step forward? You know, over the next 3.5 weeks, the potential for packing folks into our jail exists, correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
And the chance of getting somebody out has gone down significantly as well, because we're not gonna meet. I mean, is that correct?
Well, you correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, but if somebody's arrested, they're going to have to be brought in front of the judge for bond consideration. And also, let me tell you, our district judges, Judge Phelps and Judge Hayes, are meeting this morning. Judge Phelps tells me to talk about these things. My guess is, Darren, they will probably try to bond everybody that is safe to do so and give them a date after April 10th.
Correct,
And
and
if we
all
can-
that'll be done telephonically.
Okay.
Through pretrial.
But we will have to have some in-court arraignments of people in custody, right?
Correct.
There's no way
Depending on
around
how
it.
long this goes, yeah, we may have to end up having some in front of the judge. But everybody will continue to get an initial bond, and the judges, I've spoken to all of our judges, family court judge, both circuit judges and the district judges, about trying to set up some temporary protocols to help us out at the jail and still keep our community safe and recognize the rights and adhere to the rights of the individual. One of those is the continuation of the initial bond process, which is somebody comes in on a certain charge, they're given a bond. If they can make it, then they get out. If they can't make that initial bond, then they go through pretrial. Pretrial used to come in. Well, pretrial is not coming in because of actions I've taken in the last couple of weeks to try to limit one of our greatest risks, which is incoming foot traffic, in an effort to really kind of safeguard our staff and safeguard the inmates and all of our families and the community as a whole. And I gave you all the paperwork on some of the actions that I've taken, but one of the actions is pretrials not coming into our facility during this period of time. So these pretrial conferences that pretrial has with the inmate, if you don't make your initial bond, then you actually talk to pretrial about what your situation is, what your history is, what your charge is. They then are a liaison between the arrestee and the judge. The judge determines, is the preset bond appropriate, or can it be lowered or eliminated? And so that'll take place, continue to take place telephonically. So they'll continue to have those bond opportunities telephonically. Now, for those that don't bond out,
So Jella Broers and I talked yesterday about strategies he's put in place to try to mitigate potential COVID-19 exposure and trying to be forward-thinking and address it. And I also addressed concerns related to what was just shared. You know, if we can address who comes in and screen who comes in, and unless it's absolutely necessary that they do come in, it would be the best interest of everybody there.
Correct.
So go ahead and share.
Are we done voting?
I want to make sure.
I don't have anything else that requires action,
I just wanted to make sure.
except I'm going to ask your feedback, just because the potential economic impact on our budget with this situation. Should we consider, should I consider sending an email to staff saying essential, we need to look at essential spending only right now? Just being, I mean, would that doesn't require action. It just requires, I wanted your feedback before I push send on an email. Or better well, Michelle and I send an email. So, Jella Broers, if you want to share what, it's all right.
Okay.
Before he left.
Because we would not.
so my main concern with our facility and trying to safeguard the facility and the inmates and the staff is I consider the biggest risk the inbound traffic that we have. Obviously, we're going to continue to have inbound traffic with arrestees, but I have put a stop, and I've given you a list of, we actually posted this on Facebook and on our website for everybody to see. We've got a notice posted at all of our entrances. But the inbound traffic is the greatest concern for us, especially with asymptomatic individuals that may not be exhibiting symptoms but may be contagious coming into the facility. So what I've done is we've canceled all volunteer programs. That's church, AA, NA, GED, all of those things, because those require volunteers to come into the facility and have contact with the inmates. Visitations have been canceled until further notice. So no visitations, face-to-face visitations are taking place down at our facility. I am working with our phone provider to make sure that every inmate does weekly have a free phone call to their families to try to supplement the loss of this visitation time that they're experiencing. The lobby is closed, doors are locked, we got a speaker outside, and they talk to us through the speaker if they have to come in. I don't want anybody counting out bond money or anything outside. Gust of wind comes and their money blows away, or if they're trying to sign paperwork out in the rain, we don't want any of that. So we will allow them to come in for a short period of time, take care of their business, and go back outside and wait. As you all know, our lobby's extremely small. I mean, 5, 6 people in there is a crowd. So we're just not allowing anybody in there at this time. All attorney visits and probation and parole visits, Department of Community-Based Service visits, these are normally done face-to-face with the inmates. They are being allowed into the facility to have those visits with the inmates, those necessary visits, but those are going to be done through glass, whereas before they were literally face-to-face across the table from them. Those will be done in our visitation area through the glass on the telephones. All unnecessary inmate appointments outside of SCDC are suspended. Certainly, traffic coming in is a concern, but taking the inmates out anywhere where they could pick up something and bring it back in. So any kind of vision, dental, medical appointments, things like that that we can put off for the next several weeks, we're going to go ahead and put those off. These that I'm going over with you right now were implemented this week. A couple of weeks ago, we added to our screening process for inmates as they came in to try to screen out the COVID-19. So we've added screening metrics as they come in. That was added a couple of weeks ago. We've increased our sanitizing and cleaning routine at the jail, throughout the jail. We've added sanitation stations at our entrances where arrestees come in, at our front lobby, the entrances from the 2 courtrooms, wherever we have people coming in from the outside, and everybody is required, inmates, arrestees, my staff, everybody that comes into the secure part of our facility is required to sanitize their hands. Is that 100%? No, but hopefully it's going to help. I don't think we can make our place 100% impenetrable to this, quite honestly. The work details are suspended. I've worked with the judges, who have been great, by the way, and I've worked with the sheriff's office and the sheriff, who's been great, the police chief, who's been great, to change some of their protocols to help us with this issue during this period of time. And they have been more than willing and very amiable in the discussion, and really trying to work hard to do anything they can throughout this process. I wanted to just bring you guys up to speed on all of that. I wasn't sure if you had gotten any calls. We've gotten no blowback at all at the jail. I haven't taken the first negative call. I haven't spoken to the first negative person. So I've gotten no negative feedback whatsoever since these protocols were implemented. Now, the majority of these protocols were just implemented this week. So we may still get some blowback next week, but we haven't gotten the first negative feedback up to this point.
Really appreciate your work. And does anyone have any questions for Judge Broyles? Anything else you want to add? I appreciate
I feel like we're particularly vulnerable down there.
Oh,
we don't
we are.
close. We have no control over who's brought in. We have no control when they leave, and we have to have continual interactions with every one of them every day.
And I appreciate
I'm
what
just
you're
trying
doing.
to, safeguard.
No, and I appreciate you
Get
trying
ahead.
to communicate what's going on. So we're trying to be proactive.
Yes, sir.
And thanks very much. Yesterday on our social media page, and I'd ask our court to share it from theirs if they haven't, and anyone else, just made a general joint statement with Mayor Prather. I thought it was good that, to ask him to join me in sharing that, and just in general about COVID-19. Shared it on the judge's page last night, and focusing on trying to control what we can influence and not staying calm and then trying to be really important to communicating facts and such. And that statement's on there. I'm not going to read that. I want to ask you all about park usage. That questions came to me. We have tournaments starting there within 2 weeks. Tim Tevis wanted some direction on how to proceed. Anybody have any?
I think several of the sanctioning bodies have released, well, I know of one specifically that I've seen, but I think the others are doing it as well, to their directors or state directors that they are not to sanction any tournaments until everything clears up.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, do you all, right now on Mondays and Tuesday nights, are youth baseball, youth softballs using that park? I need to, I just haven't had time, but I thought it might be wise to reach out to Parks and Recreation and then also with their directors to see what they're planning on doing.
talk to the health department and maybe the hospital and see what their recommendations are.
I'll talk to Crystal Miller.
Judge, they put a big thing out nationwide for U.S. Soccer. They canceled everything, all the local soccer clubs, anything under U.S. Soccer Federation for all youth sports.
So that would go out to Lyle Road to Georgetown Football Club.
They've closed everything's closed until either April or the end of next week. That's even all local clubs have
Okay.
canceled.
Thanks for that.
And all these soccer teams, middle school.
I'll reach out to Parks and Rec and then share with the court and reach out to Georgetown Football Club as well. I just didn't want to not address that. Then I'll send an email out about essential spending, just trying to look at the potential economic impact. And then today is the deadline for our budget submissions. We'll be putting all those together next week. Appreciate your all's time today. Anything else from anyone on the court?
Does the clerk's office or, even the sheriff's office where they take property taxes and stuff, do they have like hand sanitizing stations?
I've got from Global Supply. Of course, they have right on top of their desks pump stations, but I have ordered additional 10, like to put in each end of the hallways, and then use the extra ones if we need.
Mounts.
They're all wall mounts.
Did you see people are ripping those off the walls and stealing them?
No, but we have done that to try to get that going. Anyone else on the court with anything else? Anyone in our audience that wants to share anything? Is there a motion to adjourn? A motion for Mr. Lyons and a second for Mr. Hosser. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?